On October 17 local time, the Israeli army confirmed that it had killed Yahya Sinwar, the leader of the Palestinian Islamic resistance movement Hamas. It is said that Sinwar was killed in an encounter that took place in the Rafah H Strip on October 16. One version is that it happened in the Jabalia refugee camp. He was killed in the battle against the dominant Israeli army. At the same time, the commander of the Khan Yunis battalion of the Qassam Brigades, a military organization affiliated to Hamas, seems to have died in battle as well. After the Israeli army returned to the battlefield on October 17, it recovered Sinwar's body and immediately sent it to Tel Aviv for DNA testing. After confirming Sinwar's identity through testing, it was officially announced. According to the scene of Sinwar's last battle as reconstructed by the Israeli army, Sinwar's last battle seems to be purely an accident. During the transfer process, he suddenly encountered a large number of patrolling soldiers of the Israeli army's Gaza division, and the two sides immediately engaged in battle. Since there were only 2 people around Sinwar, they were all killed by the Israeli army after a brief confrontation. Only Sinwar entered a building to take temporary shelter. The Israeli army then surrounded the building. After many attempts to rush into the room failed, they used individual rocket launchers and called in Merkava tanks to shell with tank guns, injuring Sinwar subsequently. The Israeli army used a rotorcraft drone to enter the room to investigate the situation and found Sinwar, who was seriously injured on his arms and legs. After Sinwar discovered the Israeli drone, he tried to throw a stick to shoot down the drone. After a long standoff between the two sides, when Sinwar was trying to transfer, he was shot down by an Israeli sniper and died gloriously after Sinwar's death. The leaders of the Zionist entity were overjoyed and congratulated each other. Ben-Gvir, the most extreme vanguard of the Israeli army, Israel's Minister of National Security, clamored to tell every Palestinian in the Gaza Strip the news of Sinwar's death at the highest volume. Israeli Army Chief of Staff Halevi immediately rushed to Rafah H to affectionately console those who had made contributions in suppressing chaos and suppressing bandits and show off the illustrious military achievements of the Israeli army. The Shin Bet, the Israeli intelligence agency that is also a Zionist lackey, hurriedly came out to claim credit upon seeing this situation, saying that our surveillance of Sinwar has been ongoing for several months. The successful killing of Sinwar this time is entirely due to the dedication of our soldiers and accurate intelligence. And Netanyahu, the chief of the Zionist entity, is even more insidious. In a television speech, he threatened and lured the Palestinians, using both soft and hard tactics. On the one hand, he claimed that Sinwar's death is a major victory in the massacre of Palestinians, but it does not mean the end of the war. In short, the massacre of Palestinians will continue. On the other hand, he tried to persuade the Palestinians to surrender, saying that as long as the remaining members of Hamas can release the detained Israelis, then they can ensure their safe departure from the Gaza Strip. But unfortunately, the Palestinians are not moved by Israel's deceptive policy. After all, over the past year, the Israeli army has bombed evacuating Palestinians and assassinated the negotiators of the Palestinian resistance organizations. They have gone back on their word and broken their promises, and they have long been representatives without credibility. If the Palestinians really give in, then they will definitely be massacred by the Israeli army. Israel wants to use Sinwar's death to get out of the quagmire for itself, which is simply impossible. In fact, Israel and their behind-the-scenes backer, the United States, have always had an inexplicable fantasy, it seems to come from the one-on-one duel of knights in the Middle Ages or the common boss fighting plot in Hollywood movies. For an organization, it seems that as long as its leader is assassinated, then one can wait for this organization to fall apart on its own. Israel's continuous encirclement and assassination of leaders of Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hamas, And even various resistance organizations in Nablus on the West Bank are all like this. And this time is no exception after Israel confirmed that Sinwar was killed. U.S. President Joe Biden said, "This is a beautiful day for Israel, the United States and the entire world." After Sinwar's death, Israel clamored, "Now we give you an opportunity to surrender and save your lives." And its overall backer, the United States, also hurriedly said, "Now is the best opportunity for a ceasefire in the Gaza Strip." Seriously, this is an obvious idealism and metaphysics, which is often seen in typical theocratic regimes. However, in the actual war situation, Sinwar's death in battle and the assassination of Nasser Allah have had no impact on the resistance of the Lebanese and Palestinian soldiers and civilians against the crazy attacks of the Zionist entity. Because it is not like what is propagated by the West that the conflict is caused by the will of a certain terrorist organization leader, but a war of the people of Gaza to resist the invaders. This is the will of all. On October 15th, the Rafah H Battalion of the Qassam Brigades launched a new round of ambush against the Israeli army in the Layan area east of Rafah H. After the Israeli army discovered a tunnel in the Layan area on October 10th and paid the price of 2 Israeli soldiers being killed. On October 15th, they actually sent more than a dozen Israeli soldiers to try to enter the tunnel again to investigate. The Qassam Brigades took the opportunity and set off a large amount of explosives placed in the tunnel suddenly. As a result, more than a dozen Israeli soldiers all turned into grilled squid on an iron plate. Not surprisingly, the Israeli army completely does not admit that it has suffered losses. None of them reported any injuries. I don't know if the Israeli soldiers are all starts and immune to explosive blasts, or if the lottery machine of the Israeli army is smoking and can't draw numbers for the time being. The situation on the Lebanese front is the same. I still remember that more than 20 days ago, it was rumored that the high-level leaders of Hezbollah have been completely wiped out and Hezbollah has fallen apart. So what is the result? The northern expedition of the Israeli army has been going on for almost 20 days. The advance distance is less than 800 meters. They haven't captured even a village-level stronghold. They only dare to vent their anger by firing at the positions of the UNIFIL. All kinds of difficult events, most difficult events, and serious events emerge in an endless stream. Injured and killed Israeli soldiers are sent to hospitals in northern Israel in droves. Some Zionists lament that the operation against Hezbollah is much more difficult than the operation in the Gaza Strip. Of course, if Israel is still stubborn and superstitious about violence and thinks that massacre can solve the problem, then we can guarantee that every day in the future will be more difficult than the previous day. As long as people with a little materialist thinking can understand that whether it is Hezbollah, Hamas, or other Palestinian resistance factions, whether it is Nasser Allah, Haniyeh, Sinwar, or even General Soleimani, they are not only individuals or groups. They represent the demands of the Palestinian people and the people of the Middle East to resist Zionist invasion. They are symbols of the resistance will of the people in the Crescent region. Killing a person is easy, and even annihilating an organization is not completely impossible. However, as long as the brutal invasion of the Zionists still exists and as long as the butcher's knife out, the Zionists is still constantly falling, then there will be no lack of brave warriors of resistance on the Fertile Crescent. The subsequent warriors will definitely be stronger than the previous ones. This is the meaning of resistance. The flames of resistance of the Palestinian and Lebanese people should never be extinguished and will not be extinguished. Remember that at the beginning of the LAQSA flood a year ago, the entire internet was full of rumors spread by Zionists and their supporters. Sometimes they said that Sinwar had fled to Doha, the capital of Qatar. Sometimes they said that Sinwar was living a luxurious life in a big villa in Dubai, the capital of the United Arab Emirates. Sometimes they said that Sinwar was using the people of the Gaza Strip as human shields. In fact, all these shameless rumors finally turned into boomerangs. Sinwar has been staying in the Gaza Strip all along, even in the core area of the Gaza Strip, such as Rafah or the Jabalia refugee camp. The Israeli army conducted many sweeps, but did not find him. On the contrary, the precious son of Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu was photographed doing nothing on the beach in Miami, while other Israelis were conscripted to fill the front lines. He fled the battlefield. There has not been a single so-called incident of the Palestinian resistance organizations using the elderly, the weak, women and children as human shields. On the contrary, incidents of the Israeli army using Palestinians and Lebanese as human shields and even using the UNIFIL camps as human shields emerge in an endless stream. This not only proves the shamelessness of the Israeli political leadership, but also proves the despicableness of the Israeli army. In turn, it just reflects the glorious and great and immortal struggle of the Palestinian people for independence and freedom. As for pictures and videos, etc., it is not convenient for me to show them here, but I suggest you watch them on TikTok. As for the servants who spread rumors for the Zionist entity, they should be clear about the purpose of these people's rumors, which is to alienate the Palestinian people from the peace-loving people all over the world and try to undermine the world's support for the Palestinian people's liberation struggle. Don't expect them to apologize for the rumors they spread a year ago. I can only say that if these people were around 80 years ago, they would definitely slander the Northeast Anti-Japanese United Army, which persisted in the resistance against Japanese aggression between the White Mountains and the Black Waters, as terrorists who undermine peace. Finally, as a person who has seen the scene in Gaza, I fully understand and fully empathize with the Palestinian people's liberation struggle and fully empathize with Sinwar's last battle. This is the manifestation of our ordinary people's inner empathy, of course. The path of the independence struggle of the Palestinian people and the Lebanese people still needs to be walked by them themselves, just like our war of resistance against Japanese aggression. No matter how hard it is and how many sacrifices there are, we must persevere. Relying on foreign aid may solve temporary problems, but it will inevitably lead to the incompleteness of the independence struggle. Since they have embarked on the path of independence struggle, then let's pay the price of 1 or 2 generations for generations to come.